Once again, welcome to Meat Science lecture. As you know, we are discussing about the fresh meat for postgraduate students. Already we had 3 lectures, one on the overall different aspect of meat quality, and then we had 2 lectures on fresh meat quality. That is the different parameters. And today we are the last one, that is the factors affecting meat quality. So here meat quality means about the fresh meat quality. So all these topics are part of the course at postgraduate level on fresh meat technology. So today in this topic we will discuss different aspect, I mean factors which is affecting the fresh meat quality in 2 categories. One is the pre-slaughter factors, another is the post-slaughter factors. In the pre-slaughter section we will see the animal factors, management factors and the ante-mortem factors. Similarly, in the post-slaughter also different aspect we are going to discuss. As I have mentioned, first we will discuss about the pre-slaughter factors, in which there is animal factor, that is the different aspect of animal, then the management factors, different way of rearing, and then ante-mortem factors, that is the before slaughter different aspect. So sometime the animal factor and management factor together we can call on-farm factors. In animal factors, we will see 5 different aspects. One is species, then breed, then age, then location of muscle and sex. So these are the different aspects we are going to discuss, which has got direct influence on the fresh meat quality. So first we will discuss about the species on meat quality. So meat obtained from different species will be different and specific to that particular species. For example, the buffalo meat will be lean and less in cholesterol and excellent blending quality for production of different type of products or sausages. Whereas meat from large animals like cattle and buffalo are more coarse in texture. We have discussed it in the last lecture. Whereas meat from other animals like pig, sheep, goat are comparatively less coarse. So these are the difference between the species of meat. Even color also there will be little different, and flavor also sometimes there will be specific changes due to the species. Here is a comparison of meat between chicken and mutton. The top we can see the chicken, it has got less subcutaneous fat, generally about 4% or less in young goats, and it could be up to 18 to 20% in mature goats. This, in case of goat, the muscle fiber bundle will be thicker than sheep, and that's why it will be little more coarse. Whereas in case of sheep or mutton, the muscle fat is around 3 to 4%, and in comparison to goat, the dissectable fat in lamb carcasses commonly ranges between 20 to 35%. Actually, the preference for mutton and chicken is totally different. In general, most of the part of India, the chicken is preferred, except in some places like Jammu and Kashmir, in Andhra Pradesh, the mutton is preferred, sometime in Tamil Nadu. Otherwise, in general, goat meat is preferred. However, in terms of cost per unit lean meat and in nutritional terms, chicken is better than mutton. Now about the breed, like species has got a difference on the meat quality. Similarly, the breed within the same species, different breeds of animals differ in meat quality. The best quality beef is often obtained from traditional beef breeds of cattle like Hereford and Aberdeen Angus. Other important exotic beef breeds are Belgian Blue, Limousin and Charolais. So these are all exotic breeds specifically for meat, and so they are the beef breeds. Whereas the beef from humped indigenous cattle, that is the Indian cattle, as we say Bos indicus, tends to be tougher than that from other European breeds or exotic breeds, that is Bos taurus. So indigenous breed or Bos taurus Indian cattle is generally tough meat than the exotic breeds. Here is little more details about the exotic beef breeds. As we have seen, the Hereford and Aberdeen Angus are early maturing breeds and deposit subcutaneous and intramuscular fat, that is the marbling fat we say, in the carcass at earlier age compared to dairy breeds like Friesian, Holstein and Jersey. So these beef breeds deposit fat below the skin and at the muscle and produces better quality meat. Beef breeds produce higher meat bone ratio and such meat is more tender, juicy and flavorful due to higher degree of marbling. So in case of beef, marbling is very important for flavor and tenderness, and these breeds deposit more marbling at early age, so the tenderness and juiciness and flavor is better. So different breeds of animal have different inherent amounts of intramuscular fat, that is the marbling. So marbling varies between the breeds and that makes a difference in the meat quality. Here we can see the photographs of different exotic or European beef breeds which I have discussed already, and some are developed specially for meat with a breeding policy, special kind of breeding like bottom left, sometimes it is called double muscling or Doppelender. So these are specific beef breeds of exotic origin, mostly of European. Here is a list of breeds meat type for goat and sheep, that is those breeds which are specifically for meat purpose in goat and sheep. The first one is the goat breeds for meat purpose like Black Bengal, Barbary, Gohilwadi, Kachhi, Malabari, Marwari, Mehsana, Usmanabadi, Sangamaneri and Jalawadi. And the right side we can see some of the sheep breeds for meat like Bikaneri, Magra, Malpura, Mandia, Muzaffarnagari, Madras Red and Nellore. Now we will see that age as a factor on meat quality. As used in meat grading standards, maturity is defined as the physiological age of the animals or birds from which carcasses are produced. So the age is about maturity, and maturity has a connection with the meat quality. Maturity or age at slaughter is very closely related to meat tenderness, and tenderness decreases with increasing age. As the animal becomes old, the tenderness is reduced. Therefore, meat from a young animal is more tender than from a mature animal of the same species and breed. This is mainly because of changes in cross linkages in collagen fiber. So we have discussed many times in the muscle there are three different kind of collagen coverings, and this collagen will develop more and more cross linkage which makes it more tough, and naturally meat becomes tough with the increase of age. So here once again we will see the relation of age with meat quality in terms of collagen changes. So in case of young animal, collagen cross linkages are less in number and are more easily broken. So they are less in number, easily broken, or collagen is more soluble. So naturally the meat from young animal is more tender. Whereas in case of older animals, number of cross linkage increases with the increase in age, and this converted to stable linkages with the age. So here the collagen is less soluble, so when it is cooked it won't get easily converted to gelatin. So age has profound effect on the color and flavor of meat also. With the increase of age, the color will be more dark and flavor also will be changed due to many other chemical changes. So now we will see about the color. Earlier in the meat quality first lecture we have discussed about it. So color depends on the myoglobin content and it varies with the species. In case of rabbit or poultry, I mean broiler, it is very less, that's why it is light in color, whereas in sheep, goat or in beef, the myoglobin content increases and it becomes darker in color, whereas in case of horse it is still higher, 0.7%, and it is dark meat. In case of seals and whales it is very high, 5 to 8%. That's why it looks blue in color due to the dark concentration, high concentration of myoglobin. However, with age also color changes. With advancement of animal age, the muscle color becomes darker due to increasing in myoglobin content. So at the young age, myoglobin is less. At the higher age, myoglobin is more. So the meat from older animal will be dark in color. So this is a positive contribution towards the color for meat. Then next is about the flavor. Meat flavor intensity increases with animal age. So with the increase of age, the flavor will be increased. The main reason of this flavor change is increased concentration of nucleotides. So there is a post-mortem glycolysis. So there we have discussed all this. So the nucleotides in muscle which degrade from inosinic acid to hypoxanthine during the post-mortem glycolysis or during the aging process. So that gives better flavor from the meat of old animal. So next is about the location of muscle, that is within the same carcass, same species, same breed, same animal, but between the muscle there is a difference. So this difference is mainly in the tenderness, and between the muscle there is changes. So some muscle are more tough, some muscle are more tender. So this is related to the workload or working conditions. So muscles like at the limbs and neck, they are having more workload or more continuously working. So those muscles becomes tough because they generate or accumulate more connective tissue. Whereas some muscle which are at the breast region or at the loin region, they have to do less work. So their movement and activity is less. So such muscles will produce the more tender meat. So it is about the activity. Those muscles which are very active all the time, they becomes more tough, whereas those muscles which are working less or less active, they become more tender meat. Now about the sex, that is the sex of the animal from which meat arises. So this also determines about the extent of fat deposition and growth rate, as well as development of some odorous compounds in the body related to sexual maturity, which affect the quality of meat. So male and female, there is a difference in the fat deposition, growth rate, and some odorous compounds with the sexual maturity. So that affects the quality of meats. So in general, male has less intramuscular fat than females, whereas castrated animals of both side, male and female, have more intramuscular fat than the corresponding sexually uncastrated or entire animals. That means in case of female, the fat will be more, so that will have a difference in the flavor and tenderness. If it is castrated in both male and female, the intramuscular fat, that is marbling, will be more, so meat quality will be better than the uncastrated ones. In continuation about the effect of sex on meat quality, the intact males produce superior carcass leanness and hence preferred by fresh meat merchandisers and the consumers who prefer lean meat. So those who prefer lean meat, male is better because the fat deposition is less. Similarly, the muscles of male animals tend to be larger than corresponding muscles in females. So in general, males are more active, so muscles are more grown, so the size of the muscles are larger. Then this is about some smell, particularly in pork. There is a boar taint which is not desirable, particularly in case of matured male, and this comes from the metabolism of testosterone. So male, there is testosterone which undergoes a metabolism and produces 5-alpha androst 16 in 3-one. So this gives a typical undesirable odor which is called boar taint, which is not desirable. Now we will discuss about the managemental factors. So we are discussing the pre-slaughter factors affecting meat quality, in which first we have discussed about the rearing factors. Now managemental factors, in which there are three kinds. One is system of rearing, another is feeding, another is treatment. Treatment means healthcare related drugs which has got an influence on the meat quality. Now first we will discuss about system of rearing. Among the management factors, the most important is the system of rearing, animal husbandry practice. So generally it is of three types, that is intensive system, extensive system and semi-intensive system. So intensive system is the modern factory farming in the developed countries, mostly followed by completely enclosed, and animals are grown with the stall feeding or grain feeding. The other one is the extensive system, which is followed in Asian and African countries, where animal will be free and it will be around moving and grazing in a free space. And the third is the semi-intensive, which is combination of the intensive and extensive. So here animal will be partially free for grazing and then partially it will be supplemented with concentrate feed. So we will see the difference of these three systems on the meat quality. Here we will see how the system of rearing affecting the meat quality. Firstly, in case of free range animals, they have the access to variety of feedstuffs prior to slaughter that may affect the flavor of meat. So different kind of feedstuffs will have its own odor and smell that will be accumulated in the muscle or fat and affect the flavor. Meat from grass finished cattle is of lower quality and less tender from grade fed cattle. So generally nowadays it is becoming popular by grass finished, but some quality aspect will be less, like the tenderness from the than the grain fed cattle. Then in case of intensive system, if the animals are overcrowded, there may be limited access to feed and water, leading to fighting and inability to rest proper. So when we are going by intensive system, large number of animals together, there may be competition and fighting, leading to continuous stress, and that affect the meat quality. So in these situations, animals growth rate will be affected and meat will be lower in overall fat and may have higher incidence of DFD conditions, which we have discussed earlier. Now in continuation about the system of rearing and meat quality, when the animals are reared in a more ideal condition, will have better growth rate, uniform fat deposition and will produce better quality meat. So ideal condition is proper rest, proper space, proper grazing. Now in case of free range animals, have more muscle pigments than their stall fed counterparts. Due to their activity and movement, their muscle will have more pigment, that is myoglobin, and that will be having better color. With a high plane of nutrition and a diet low in iron lead to low myoglobin concentration. So even with a good nutrition, if the iron supplement is less, the myoglobin concentration will be less and the color will be less. Now we will talk about feeding and meat quality. So feeding of high energy carbohydrate diets leads to faster growth and fat deposition in all livestock. So if we are feeding with high energy, automatically there will be more fat deposition. So that makes an influence on the meat quality. Similarly, feeding of meat animals with fish meal, certain plants and certain strains of clove and other legumes may produce meat with abnormal flavor. So many such typical roughage or legumes can produce a typical abnormal odor in the meat. Use of high concentration of animal manure as a source of nitrogen may also lead to tainting of meat. So generally sometimes poultry manure is used in case of pig farming. So then this manure sometimes can produce a tainting in the meat. So here we will discuss about the treatment and healthcare use of different drugs which has got an influence on the meat quality. This can be either external use or internal use. So some volatile chemicals such as turpentine, linseed oil, ammonia used in veterinary practices may lead to tainting of meat. So these are all used for external purpose. Sometimes this can be managed by chilling of carcass for 24 hours. So whenever a carcass has got such taint, it should be chilled for 24 hours, then this smell will go. Care must be taken to provide adequate gap between medication and slaughter so that veterinary drug residues are not present in the meat. So whenever there is use of internal drugs, different kind of antibiotics and other chemotherapeutic agents, in such cases there has to be sufficient gap so that the drug residues are eliminated, so that meat will be free from all such residues. So we are discussing about the pre-slaughter factors on meat quality, in which we have already discussed about the animal factor and the rearing factor, and the last is the ante-mortem factors. This is just before slaughter, what are the things which affect the meat quality. So in which we will discuss three aspects. One is pre-slaughter handling, another is transportation, another the stunning method. So these three things has an influence on the meat quality. Now we will discuss about the pre-slaughter handling. The pre-slaughter handling of meat animals has got three aspects. One is during the process of loading. So animal has to be procured and transported. So they have to be loaded into different kind of vehicles. So that is one point where the handling is important. Then second is after they arrive from unloading and reaching to the layerage. That's another phase of handling which causes tremendous influence. And third is handling from layerage to the slaughter hall. So this is another phase how the animal is handled. This process has an influence on the meat quality. During the completion of these processes, animals are subjected to wide variety of stressors which adversely affect the meat quality, causing PSC or DFT. So if the stress is very acute and sudden during the just before the slaughter, that may cause PSC. Whereas when the stress is long term throughout the journey period, starting from loading till the slaughter, it's a long term stress that leads to the condition of DFT. Here we will discuss about transportation and its influence on the meat quality. This we have already discussed briefly when I have discussed about the transportation of meat animals. So transportation phase of livestock marketing can be one of the most important event affecting meat quality. In India, the animals are generally transported by hoof to the market, and from the market they are transported by trucks to the urban abattoirs. Most death losses and tissue bruising occur during transit. So we have mentioned there sometime 1 to 2% death is possible, particularly in summer days, and often there could be injuries and bruises either due to the rough handling or fighting between animals or improper design of the trucks. And transportation causes long-term stress, and that may lead to the condition DFD, which we have discussed earlier. In continuation about transportation, improperly ventilated trucks, warm climatic conditions and overloading can result in extreme stress to the animals, resulting in poor quality of carcass and loss of weight. So when the proper climatic protection is not there, overloading or improper ventilation, animal will have severe stress, and that will affect the meat quality and loss of weight, which we call shrinkage. Under normal marketing condition, the muscle weight is not affected, though animals may lose 2 to 5% of live weight, but that loss is mainly due to the normal physiological process, losing urine and dung, etc., or even by breathing, etc. So this loss is natural, but it won't affect the muscle weight loss. The rough handling, mixing of animals in the layerage and poorly designed layerage and other stress just prior to slaughter result in PSC meat. So before the slaughter, when the animals is handled from layerage to slaughter point, there could be rough handling and panic and poor design which cause severe stress and leading to a pale soft exudative meat, which we have discussed in the previous lecture. About the effect of stunning on meat quality, we have discussed earlier the stunning is a practice for making the animal unconscious before slaughter by bleeding. Now the type of stunning method used can affect meat quality either by short-term pre-slaughter stress or by affecting bleeding. So stunning itself can create some stress just before, and also it may affect the bleeding, and that can affect the meat quality. Therefore, stunning process is not completely free from stress, but definitely reduces stress response compared to bleeding without stunning. So if we do the slaughter without stunning, in that case the panic and stress will be much more, the struggling will be there, and that may cause more effect. but with stunning the stress is less, but it has some impact. The severity of stress of stunning process is usually expressed in the muscle by degree of glycogen depletion. So just before slaughter, this particular stress due to stunning process will cause a immediate muscle glycogen. So when it is too much, that causes the PAC meat. In continuation about stunning method, as I mentioned, the glycogen level will be affected due to the pre-slaughter stress, and that will affect the muscles and determines the pH decline. We have discussed earlier post-mortem pH decline. So that pH decline will be affected. Accordingly, the properties of meat will be affected. Another aspect is if there is delay between stunning and sticking in both captive bolt pistol and electrical stunning, it produces a condition called blood splash in muscles. So this happens due to the severe rise in blood pressure during the stunning. So if once the animal is stunned, it has to be blade or sticking should be done immediately, because during stunning the blood pressure will be very high. If it is delayed, there will be a rupture of blood vessels inside the muscle, and that causes a kind of bleeding inside the muscle, which is called blood splash. So that affect the quality of the muscle as a meat. Similarly, in case of pigs, anesthetized by carbon dioxide produce the lowest incidence of PAC and blood splash, and the quality of meat produced is superior. So in case of pig, carbon dioxide stunning is better. So now we will discuss about the post-slaughter factors. So far we have discussed pre-slaughter factors in different aspects on the meat quality. Now we will discuss about the post-slaughter factors, where we will have four aspects. One is the temperature. That is the temperature at which the carcass is exposed. And secondly, about the contamination. Thirdly, about the hot processing, and some other miscellaneous factors. So these four aspects we will discuss how these factors affect the meat quality. So temperature of the carcass after dressing is important, I mentioned. So it's a major factor determining the rate of post-mortem chemical reactions. So there is a series of biochemical changes after slaughter which depends on the temperature in the surrounding or of the carcass. Therefore, temperature at which the freshly dressed carcasses or meat are stored have a profound effect on the functional and eating qualities of meat. It is desirable to reduce muscle temperature after slaughter as quickly as possible to minimize protein denaturation and to check microbial growth in meat. So if we do not reduce the temperature quickly, anyway there will be microbial contamination and their growth will be more. Similarly, if the animal is at high temperature and there is a fall of pH, it causes a denaturation of protein and affect the meat quality. But two undesirable conditions happens due to this quick cooling or chilling. So one is cold shortening, another is thaw rigor. So cold shortening is when the animal is chilled below 15 degrees Celsius and when the rigor mortis is not over. That leads to a shortening and meat become tough. Similarly, if that such pre-rigor meat is frozen directly, then later on when it is thawed, it produces a severe shortening that is called thaw rigor. So both of these we have discussed earlier. Now we will briefly discuss about the aging or conditioning. This is a practice of holding the carcass above the freezing point for a sufficient time for some desirable changes. So holding of meat at low temperature results in improvement in tenderness, juiciness and flavor of meat. So this process or practice is called aging or conditioning. This is an important event which determines the palatability of meat, particularly beef. The major factor responsible for meat aging is degradation or proteolysis of muscle protein. So when we hold the carcass at a lower temperature, slowly there will be enzymatic activity which causes breakdown of protein and gives better flavor and tenderness. So this proteolysis in post-mortem muscle is contributed mainly by calcium activated sarcoplasmic factors. They are like enzymes also called as calpains, and also their level and the inhibition is done by calprotectin. So if the calpain is more and the calprotectin is less, then that will give very desirable changes. So this we have discussed in the very early stage of my lecture, conversion of muscle to meat and followed by aging. In future I want to make a more details lecture only on aging and the chemical changes and its benefits, etc. Now we will discuss about another aspect, that is the contaminants, which determines to a great extent about the wholesomeness or microbial quality of meat. So contamination during slaughter and subsequent handling of meat determines the wholesomeness of meat to a great extent. So there are several practices starting from stunning, then knives, scalding tanks. They are the major source of contamination to dressed carcass even during evisceration and worker's hand. So if proper cares are not taken during these processes, the contamination will be more. The significance of contamination of carcasses during slaughter is that more the number of organisms, less is the storage life of meat and vice versa. So perfect hygienic practices are most important to have minimum contamination. So this aspect we have discussed a lot in the slaughter practices many times. So our motto should be to minimize the microbial contamination. In continuation about contaminants, meat receives extensive handling during cutting and deboning, which makes it more susceptible to contamination. The level of contamination depends on local conditions, the throughput of the deboning room, the temperature, the time, the cleanliness of the cutting tables, conveyor belts, knives and other equipment. So in the slaughter process, after slaughter it is chilled and then it goes to a meat cutting room where it is removed from the muscle and bone. So this process undergo lot of handling and the contamination depends on the room temperature, time of exposure and hygienic conditions and the other utensils and apparatus. To check the microbial growth and contamination, temperature of meat cutting room must be lowest possible. So generally in the developed countries it is recommended to have 12 degree or below, but actual working will be very stressful for the worker in such a low temperature. Now we will discuss another modern practice which has got a better influence on the quality. So in a conventional process, the carcass is taken for chilling as a whole to bring it to 7 degrees Celsius or below, and then it goes for cutting and processing. Now in this, the disadvantage is the whole carcass has to be cooled, so in which there are large amount of fats and bones. But later on when we cut and remove, these bones and fats becomes byproducts. So to cool the whole carcass it takes extra energy, lot of extra energy, so cost becomes more. Moreover, when we are trying to chill the whole carcass, it is highly irregular. First of all, it takes a lot of time to chill it and there will be no uniformity in chilling. So some portion will be more chilled whereas some inner portion will not be chilled easily. So this is a disadvantage in the traditional practice. So there is a plan for doing it first processing or cutting and removing the muscle and then go for chilling. That is called hot processing. So as I mentioned, hot processing is a new practice due to the disadvantage of traditional chilling and cutting and removing the muscle. So to solve this problem, a processing method referred to as hot burning or hot cutting has been developed in modern practice of meat processing. In this method, deburning is done when the carcass is still hot before any chilling. So hot processing affects the meat quality both positively and negatively. The positive aspect is that it will have a better functional properties. In hot deboning, the pH will be high because there is no postmortem glycolysis, so it will have high water holding capacity. So such meat has got better property if we go for further processing or cooking. But there is a disadvantage, like because it is at a high temperature and the pH is also high, so it is more affected for microbial growth, and unless we chill rapidly the microbial load will increase. So this is the two different aspects of hot processing. Here once again we will discuss the advantage and disadvantage of hot processing. First is advantage. There is a better yield, about 2%. The water holding capacity will be higher, so there will be less drip and it will have a uniform color, and it reduces the refrigeration space because first it is cut into smaller part. The requirement of energy for cooling will be reduced and labor cost will be reduced, and it reduces the time needed to produce marketable meat. Whereas the disadvantage is it will affect the characteristic shapes of joints and slightly tough meat, and then the toughness in hot processed meats results from the heat shortening due to prolonged holding of meat at a high temperature, or sometimes since the muscles are removed it undergo quick chilling, so that also can cause cold shortening. Sometimes conditions will be highly suitable for microbial growth because the carcass or meat is kept at a higher temperature for a long time, so there is a risk of more microbial growth. So this is the both side of hot processing. So there are certain other modern practices. These are the other factors affecting the meat quality. So post-slaughter operations to improve the meat quality, that is the modern practices. First is electrical stimulation of carcasses. This is a modern practice for carcasses just after finishing the slaughter and dressing. This has two purposes. One is it helps to do the fast glycolysis. So after that the carcass can be taken for quick chilling. In a normal condition, if we go for early chilling, that leads to cold shortening, which we have discussed. And further, this electrical stimulation creates a very high speed contraction of muscles, so that leads to quick utilization of energy, and it has got some influence of tenderness. That vigorous contraction by electrical stimulation, it helps in tenderization also. Then secondly, there is a hanging beef sides from H bone. So normally we hang the carcass from the Achilles tendon. Instead of that, if we hang it from H bone, the tension will be more on more number of muscles. So normal hanging, it won't give that stress and tension to other muscle, but when it is hanged from the H bone, more number of muscle we get a tension, and that helps in tenderness. And another modern practice is infusion of calcium chloride in the muscle. So through some large arteries we can infuse calcium chloride, and that helps in better activity of enzymes inside for tenderness, like calcium activated sarcoplasmic factor. So this can improve the tenderness in meat. Now we are at the end of this lecture. So today we have discussed different kind of factors influencing the meat quality. So we have discussed in pre-slaughter factors and post-slaughter factors. In the pre-slaughter, we have first discussed about the animal factors, management factors and rearing factors. And then later we have discussed about the ante-mortem factors, where there is about the transportation, handling and stunning, etc. And then later we have discussed about the post-slaughter factors. Here we have discussed about the temperature conditions, other storage conditions, and finally about some modern practices. So altogether we have finished some important aspect of fresh meat quality for the postgraduate students. Thank you.